What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Diego DJ here, along with my host, Chris Jones. It is episode 19, season 2 of the Yellow Card Podcast, presented and brought to you by our good partners over at studentunionsports.com. Make sure you're checking out their content. A lot of March Madness content coming out from them. A lot of really good articles coming up. A lot of beautiful predictions as well. Some upsets hit here and there as well that our team over there predicted. So, again, make sure you're checking out studentunionsports.com. No subscriptions needed. Totally free to check out the website and support some local talent as well as young college talent coming out of a lot of schools in the states. Jones, speaking of March Madness, got a lot going on soccer wise. Lot going on. Happy St. Patrick's Day for you, my Irish good friend. Happy St. Patrick's Day to my poor liver this past weekend. I'm still in recovery mode. We'll share that it's my first time since my freshman year in college ever blacking out. Yeah, that was not fun. My stomach's still experiencing the side effects of it. So, yeah.
If Diego gets up and makes any sudden movements, everybody knows why.
Yeah, exactly. But without further ado, we got a lot to talk about here soccer-wise. We got some FA Cup semifinals that are looking spicy towards the end. Got some news to break out as well, and we got a lot of content to touch upon. So, Jones, I'll leave the starting slot to you. What do you want to start with?
I think we should go over the draws from this past week.
All right, let's do it.
So let's start off with the Champions League. So in the round of 16, we had AC Milan move on. We had Bayern Munich move on. We had Chelsea move on after coming back against Borussia Dortmund. We had Benfica move on. We had Man City, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, and Napoli.
Yep.
So we are officially in the quarterfinals of this tournament. There's a 75% chance that an Italian team is going to make the Champions League final for the first time since Juventus did a few years back. So this is very much so good for the Italian league. They've played well all year long, and the fact that they're getting a potential team, it's either them or Benfica coming from that side. So it's a little weird based on how they did the drawing of the semifinal matchups. But listen, that's what we love about Champions League, right? So we can't get mad. And they're looking to become the first Italian side to win the Champions League since 2009, 2010 when Inter Milan did it as well. So with that being said, the matchups are as followed for the quarterfinal round. We have Real Madrid and Chelsea, which I called, by the way, which good on me.
Here we go. Here we go. The taps on the shoulders begin.
Correct. I will get the taps on the shoulders because
here we go. It's just Yellow Card Podcast fashion, isn't it?
Yeah, well, what else do you expect, man? This is what we do here. So we have them at the top, and then underneath them, it's Manchester City and Bayern Munich. So those four teams are going to battle in the quarterfinals and the semifinals just to reach the finals. And then in the bottom part, we have Benfica and Inter Milan, and AC Milan and Napoli. So we'll dive into these little games first. Which one of these quarterfinal matchups do you want to discuss first?
I think it's important to talk about the AC Milan versus Napoli matchup. That is literally David versus Goliath in the Italian league right now. Napoli's firing off on all cylinders. Very good forward mechanics going on with Victor Osimhen and the other gentleman whose last name I can't even pronounce, and I'm not going to bother to. And then you got AC Milan that's firing off in all cylinders as well. Oliver Giroud looking really good. The squad in itself looking very good. It's just quite the matchup for this quarterfinal round. I more than anyone kind of want to see an Italian final altogether. I'm just not sure what we're gonna get for that Italian final. If it's Napoli versus Inter, if it's AC Milan versus Inter, not entirely sure. But this would be really, really cool to see once again we had an English final with Manchester City versus Chelsea not too long ago, and then we have an opportunity here to potentially see an Italian final. So that would be really cool to watch.
Yeah, I mean, if we get the semifinal matchup of the two Italian sides, it's going to be interesting no matter what. So I think for me, with the AC Milan Napoli matchup, we've seen it so far this season in the Serie A, with Napoli coming on top, I believe. Yeah, Napoli beat them back. Napoli beat them back in September 2-1. But both these teams are projected to go up. Victor Osimhen slowly working himself into a big deal this summer to go play in the Premier League for probably any of the top 6 teams that he wants. I think I would much more lean Napoli to move on out of that semifinal matchup.
Yeah,
right now.
Potentially. Yep.
All right, what about, speaking of stick with Italian, Benfica, Inter Milan, what do you think there?
I think I'm not very hopeful about Inter Milan, to be honest with you. I like what Benfica's looking like so far. We've predicted the Portuguese sides to be the major upsetter sets here. It happened with Arsenal and Sporting, which we'll talk about in a few. I think Benfica could deliver the upset here.
Yeah, I just think the way that Benfica is playing, man, you've said it best here. So I think, listen, the fact that Inter Milan has made it to a quarterfinal it's the best case scenario for them right now.
It's kind of impressive, yeah.
Because we've seen them be these good teams just to fold. We haven't seen them fold so far in the Champions League, and I think it's coming. I like Benfica. There's a lot of talk about Lukaku on and out of Inter again. There's so much drama building up between this team. I just think Benfica is solid all around, and I think that this Portuguese side gets to the semifinal.
Yep.
All right, let's do Real Madrid and Chelsea.
It's a giveaway.
If you told me at the beginning of the season that this was going to be a quarterfinal matchup we were going to get, I would have been ecstatic.
Yeah.
Right now, not so much.
Yeah. Me too. This was Thomas Tuchel versus Carlo Ancelotti. I think would be in a battle for the two best coach sides in the world right now. Granted, it doesn't help that Real Madrid lost El Clasico earlier this weekend against Barcelona. Barcelona played them really, really well, actually. So kudos to Barcelona on that. Pep Guardiola was in attendance, so that tells you it was an important El Clasico altogether for the two teams. But to be frankly honest with you, Chelsea's still leaving a lot to desire. And I don't know if they got what it takes to handle a Real Madrid side the way that they've been playing this year. Not their best performance. Lastly, in a Clasico, probably not going to win La Liga this year, considering that Barcelona are quite ahead of them. But to be frankly honest with you, Real Madrid is still Real Madrid, man. And with Carlo Ancelotti at the helm, I'd still be a little threatened by them. So not entirely sure that Chelsea's got what it takes.
No, definitely not. And I don't trust him one bit. I think for me, that's where my gambling side kicks in a little bit here. At the beginning of, before, sports betting officially became legal in Massachusetts, so had to dip my toes in a little bit, you know me. But I did a 4-leg future with Real Madrid reaching the Champions League final. So I hope to pray that they get through Chelsea fully healthy, because they have to play the winner of this next matchup that we're going to talk about, and that's going to be an absolute dogfight. So between that, we have Manchester City and Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
Bayern hasn't been the same Bayern Munich we've seen over these past few seasons. And Manchester City, they've dominated, but they haven't been as all around good as they've been. It's been the Erling Haaland show in Manchester for Man City. What do you think for this matchup, especially because of the João Cancelo versus his old team aspect as well?
I think it comes down to two aspects. It's João Cancelo versus Manchester City. It's Erling Haaland's history versus Bayern Munich. Erling Haaland's history versus Bayern Munich has not been noticeably all that great. Bayern Munich somehow, some way has always managed to escape away with either a tie or a win, but it hasn't always been pretty for Erling Haaland when facing Bayern Munich. On the other hand, João Cancelo facing Manchester City for the first time, being on the opposite side of things. Cancelo looking pretty good for Bayern Munich so far. It's like you put it, it's a dogfight. I don't think this matchup ends up on a final score. I think the final deciding factor of this is penalties, where Bayern Munich potentially is the upper side here, considering that Jan Sommer has looked very, very good for them this whole entire season. And for penalty takers, I mean, Bayern Munich has some very solid ones at the helm. So if I'm to take a side right here, I say Bayern Munich, but I'm not overly confident as I would be in years previous with this matchup.
Yeah, I think overall, if I was to give you a percentage on what I think is going to happen here, I think Bayern has a slight edge, 60% beating Manchester City. I think with the first leg being at Etihad, I think if Bayern Munich can keep it to, a 1-0 or 1-1 draw, something along those lines, I think they're going to absolutely wipe the door with them.
Even a 2-1, even a 2-1 score helps Bayern Munich a lot.
So yeah, so that's where I see this as. So hopefully moving forward, we can see both sides play very, very well. I think this is going to be very, very entertaining, and the winner of this.
One thing we forgot to touch upon, though, is this is heartbreak for Pep Guardiola as well. Because before he even came to Manchester City, he was with Bayern Munich. And he did a lot with Bayern Munich, including the ever glorious match where Robert Lewandowski scored 5 goals in 10 minutes.
Yeah, this is very much so true. That's also on the thing as well. So just something to keep a tab on for sure.
Yep.
So we talked Champions League. Those are very good. Let's get into the Europa League, shall we?
Yeah.
That draw, I think, is setting up for an old coach to face his former team in the final, and it's just money, 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 ratings, ratings, ratings galore. I can see it now. So why don't we dive into this at first, okay?
Let's do it.
So the first quarterfinal match we have on the left side, Juventus and Sporting. This, to me, Sporting just knocked out Arsenal. You and I both were laughing at it the other day when we saw it. I think Sporting is a talented team. I think Juventus isn't what they used to be, but I do think that Juventus has enough to get this done. I like them to move on over Sporting here.
I think there's a lot of history between these two teams. Sporting last year beat Juventus and eliminated them out of a serious tournament again. Actually, no, it wasn't Juventus. It wasn't Sporting. It was Benfica, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Either way,
it was like 2 years ago in the Champions League.
Yeah.
We still had Ronaldo.
This Italian side always struggles with the Portuguese side for some odd reason. They handle the first round, but the second round they can't capitalize. Where this is a team that's heavily relying on Angel Di Maria to get everything done for them. The way that Sporting played Arsenal, if they played even just remotely similarly, the same way that they played Arsenal onto Juventus, I see no hope at all for Juventus. And I agree with you, Juventus is not even close to being the same side that they were maybe even 3, 4, 5 years ago. I hate to tell you, I'm taking Sporting to move on this one. I want to see Juventus move on, but I'm taking Sporting to move on here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's just I hope for this next team's sake that they get Juventus so they get the chance to face a different style of play, because if they have to play Sporting, this will be the third Spanish/Portuguese side that they have to play. So,
Yeah.
hoping for something a little different to them. But we'll start off with this. Your Manchester United Red Devils are taking on Sevilla. They're on the same side in the upper part. Excuse me. Just real quick, if you remember, there was a man who attacked the Sevilla goalie during their match with PSV a month ago. He officially got handed a 40-year stadium ban by PSV.
Yeah.
So something to watch out for. But Manchester United versus Sevilla, United versus another Spanish side here in the Europa League. They've played well. What are your thoughts on your draw with Sevilla?
Well, for United, it's very important to come up with a new strategy. And the reason I say that is because Sevilla right now has sacked their manager and they're looking for an additional manager to come in during the season. No idea why they would sack their current manager, considering that they're still in the Europa, league quarterfinals here and still competing for a potential title. Yeah, on their Spanish side, they haven't really done all that well. But on the other hand, they're still in European contention here. So I'm not entirely sure why even change strategies this late in the season. However, for United, it's important to come in with something different, a different tactic, maybe a 4-3-3 format, maybe even a 4-4-2 format. But they need to do something different with their formation, because if they don't, they've become a little too predictable. And even if a new manager comes in for Sevilla and takes advantage of how predictable they become, this is a tough matchup for United. Now, if they continue to fire off in all cylinders that they've been doing with Rashford at the helm and Anthony putting in his grain of salt here and there, same with Jadon Sancho, then United needs to take care of things at home so that they can cruise away in Spain and walk away onto the semifinals.
I think they got this in the bag. Sevilla, they haven't played well.
No, they haven't.
They haven't played well. So I think for them, this was probably the more favorable matchup that they could have gotten in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So if I'm a United fan, which I, by God, couldn't pay me enough to be, I think it's an easy move on. And I personally think they play Juventus in the semifinal, which would be a draw to see two good legs against an English and Italian side going, and then would lead up to the potential for United versus who we'll get into in a couple seconds here. But let's go to the other side of the bracket for the Europa League. We got Bayern Leverkusen versus Union Saint-Gilloise.
I like Union Saint-Gilloise. However, Bayern Leverkusen has been playing a complete different way than what we've been used to seeing them throughout the years. I see Leverkusen actually finally taking care of this and eliminating UCG out of the competition. We thought Union Berlin would be that team. I just didn't see Berlin having everything they needed to capitalize here, while Leverkusen has it all. They have really good center mid application, and they have a very good pair of center forwards. I'm going with Bayer Leverkusen here. Moving on.
Yeah, I think the Cinderella run of Union Saint-Gilloise has ended here. I think Leverkusen is just the harder team, and you got to ride the harder team in this situation. I'll take Leverkusen to move on here. And then next one, we got Feyenoord and AS Roma.
I'll be honest with you. This is, everybody's looking forward to a potential matchup between Manchester United and Roma in the final. I have a sneaky suspicion here, though, that Feyenoord could be the massive upsetter of the whole entire thing. And we could actually be seeing more of a matchup between Manchester United and Feyenoord than anything else. I like Feyenoord's forwards. I like their strategy. And I like the fact that they're so unpredictable. And they've been, throughout this whole entire season, very unpredictable. Nobody thought that they would even get to the quarterfinal rounds. Nevertheless, face Roma. It's an unfavorable matchup because Jose Mourinho is known to take teams to cup finals. I just wouldn't be surprised if this is the one team that can spoil that Cinderella run for Mourinho at Roma.
I just think Roma matched up well with them.
I agree. I just Feyenoord for some odd reason has been full of surprises this year.
With the first leg at Feyenoord, I don't think it. If you were talking the second leg was at Feyenoord, I would say okay, maybe you have a potential here, but no, I really do think that Roma moves on here.
Man, I hope so. I want to see that Manchester United Roma final so bad.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
But speaking again, though, the Italian Serie A though has 5 teams potentially all competing in the final, and they're all the top 5 of Italy: AC Milan, Inter, Napoli, Roma, Juventus, all of them.
Well, Juventus would be the top 5 in Italy if they didn't get a 15-point deduction for this season.
Yeah.
Fun fact for you, ready for this? So they got a 15-point deduction this season, right? So they should be at 56 points, which would put them in second place. Do you know where they're placed right now?
Probably 8th.
7th.
Oh, close.
They're in 7th place and are trailing AS Roma by 6 points for the 5 and AC Milan by 7 for the 4. If they somehow manage to take a 15-point deduction
and still get top 4.
And still get top 4, I don't know. If they're within 15 points of Napoli by the end of the season, it's going to make me think a little bit differently on if Napoli really was the best team in the Serie A this year. Just saying.
Listen, I'll even say this right now. I'll even say this. The fact that they're 7th place with a team that needs so much rebuilding done and with a club that internally is broken, whatever Allegri is doing at Juventus, let the man keep doing. Let him keep doing what he's doing. This is Massimiliano Allegri and his project right now with Juventus is the Italian version of what Mikel Arteta had to endure with Arsenal. It's exactly what's going on. Exactly it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a story. Like, I was looking at this a couple weeks ago. I was looking at the table. It's like, why are they all the way down in 13th with this record? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right, the 15-point deduction.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've managed to work their way back up over the mediocrity teams, and they're currently sitting 4 points behind Atalanta for 6th. I mean, they're 17-5-5. They've scored the 3rd most goals in the Serie A. It's just something that has to get talked about a little bit more, and it's really not because of what happened this season. They'd be sitting right now, and they would be sitting in second place with 56 points.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think what Allegri's doing, let him keep doing, let him keep cooking. Right now, the fact that even Nedved is not involved anymore in the decision making for that club and that new owners are coming in, it's just fantastic.
I have no idea.
It's a beautiful thing.
There's potential that Juventus could be fully back next year.
I sure hope so, man. I think the whole world wants to see that.
I want to see it. All right. Champions League, Europa League, FA Cup. Semifinals are placed with the likelihood that we're going to get an all-Manchester final for the FA Cup. We have Manchester City taking on Sheffield, and we have Brighton taking on Manchester United.
Which, by the way, this will be the first time in FA Cup history. Manchester City versus Manchester United in the final. This could be the very first Manchester Derby final ever in the FA Cup.
And boy, would that be huge for the FA Cup.
Yeah.
So let's do this, right? If we look at the last FA Cup finals, right? So last year, it was Liverpool beating Chelsea by penalties, right?
Yeah.
Leicester beating Chelsea the year before. Arsenal beating Chelsea. Chelsea made it to Chelsea made it to 3 straight FA Cup finals and lost all 3 of them. Then we had Manchester City, who won their last one in 2018-2019 over Watford 6-0. United's last one was in 2017-2018 when they lost to Chelsea 1-0. The last time they won was 2015-2016 when they beat Crystal Palace 2-1.
Yeah. Okay.
Since 2000, since the year 2000, United and City both have won twice. United won in 04 and in 16. City won in 11 and 19. United's made the final 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, won it twice. City's made it 1, 2, 3 times and won twice.
Right.
Since 2000.
Yeah.
So if we see this derby, what are your thoughts on the potential of seeing Manchester United versus Manchester City in the FA Cup final?
Realistically, I don't see it happening. I think for Manchester City, there's just too much to focus on. And the fact that they're mentally still in the mindset that they can catch up to Arsenal is eventually going to lead to mistakes. Do I see Sheffield pulling the surprise here? Potentially. I mean, Sheffield's look pretty goddamn good. Is it realistically to see the upset? No, it's Manchester City. However, for City, something needs to give. Is it the run to go get an FA Cup title? Or is it the run of getting the Champions League? Or is it the run of getting the Premier League? Because not all three can be accomplished at this point. And the way that your players are responding, I don't think all three titles right now could even happen. So I think that if you are Pep Guardiola, you're weighing out your options right now. Your main focus is to stay healthy for the Champions League. You want to win that title so badly. It's been Pep Guardiola's dream with Manchester City all these years. They have never won a Champions League title under Pep Guardiola's helm. This is the year to do it. I think eventually one of those three give up. Could be just that they won the FA Cup title and the Champions League title, which if you're Pep Guardiola, you're very happy with that. But if you're Pep Guardiola, you know that you're not going to be able to take it easy at Manchester United, because if there's something that really fired up Manchester United was that beatdown Liverpool gave them, and they're not looking forward to have it again.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, when you look at Sheffield, right? You look at them where they're at the table. They're currently sitting second in the EFL.
Yeah, they'll be coming up next year for the Premier League.
Potentially, there's still 8 games. They got 9 games left.
They could very well win the cup too over there, by the way.
13 points back of Burnley. Burnley 24-11-2.
Yeah.
Burnley's only given up 29 goals in the EFL, so they're probably going to work their way back up. Which, by the way, it's going to be an interesting race. These next 8-9 games, whatever these teams have left.
Yeah.
Because obviously we know the 3 and 6 and 4 and 5 play each other, with the winner of those two playing each other, and then that's the 13 that moves up. So right now, if it were to end today, it would be Middlesbrough versus Millwall.
Jeez.
Which, if we got Millwall in the Premier League, it would be kind of cool. And then Luton Town and Blackburn are the 2 matchups. But to dive in, I just think it's inevitable. I do agree with what you're saying. Mistakes can be made, but I do think that mistakes are made. If you look at Manchester City's schedule in more crucial situations. So if you look at, they're 8 points back with a game in hand on Arsenal.
Yeah.
Coming up, they have Liverpool at home, at Southampton. One of those two they could easily slip up on.
Mm-hmm.
Leicester, both the quarterfinal matchups in the Champions League. Brighton, they still have to play Arsenal at home. They have to play at Fulham. And then in May, it's home versus Leeds, at Everton, home versus Chelsea, at Brentford.
Yeah.
So there are some games in that stretch that they could easily slip up and lose out on the Premier League title again. They could easily do the same thing. Erling Haaland can easily get stopped by Bayern Munich. They've done it before. They can easily do it again. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think we're destined to get a Manchester Derby for the FA Cup final.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. At this point right now is just we gotta something's gotta give for them.
What is it going to be? We'll have to wait and find out, I guess. All right, let's look back into the notes that we got. One of the big ones that we definitely have to talk about is Conte's outburst from this past weekend. Tottenham was up 3-1, and the last 15 minutes of play was absolutely horrendous by them. They dropped the chance to get 3 points. They dropped the chance to take a bigger lead in the table for that fourth spot, and Antonio Conte let them have it.
Yep.
So instead of getting to 51 and being ahead of Manchester United, they're now still only 2 points ahead of Newcastle.
Yeah. Listen, if you are Antonio Conte right now, you are wondering to yourself, is it even worth staying in this team for next season or not? And if you're Antonio Conte, you know that the decision is no. If you are Paratici right now, looking to build the next foundation of Tottenham, you're doing everything in your power, you best can, to ensure that this guy stays. If you're Daniel Levy and you don't care, then you just do what you usually do. You just move out of the way, let somebody else take the blame, and go on with life. And that is the unfortunate part of Spurs. Year over year, we've seen a lot of people come in here. We've seen Mauricio Pochettino. We've seen Nuno Espirito Santo. We've seen Jose Mourinho. Now we're seeing Antonio Conte now come in. And throughout the years, one message that has always resounded is that, number one, the players in that club are very selfish, which to 75% of the reason, yeah, it's true. But the other side of the reason as well is that the fact of no accountability at all from this club, no accountability. And that is the part that if you are a top manager in the world, like Antonio Conte, Jose Mourinho, if those are people that are pointing that out to you consistently, you have to look inside. You have to take a look deep inside, and you're not doing that. And that's just the biggest problem altogether that we've seen with this club. And that's why they're not gonna be successful. They just can't. They can bring Mauricio Pochettino all they want back, like they're probably gonna do next year, to replace Antonio Conte. But to be frankly honest with you, until this club starts taking accountability, investing correctly, and letting the managers actually make decisions for their own, Spurs just simply not it. The number one thing they need to do, if you are Spurs and you're looking to generate revenue, because God forbid you spend the money incorrectly, you need to sell Harry Kane and you need to sell Richarlison immediately. That's the one thing you need to do.
Yeah, I think I have to see how this plays out. We have to see how the season plays out. If they finish in the top 4, I don't think much is going to change with this team. But if they somehow manage to follow the top 4, I think this is where we start to see the trouble in paradise here. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. I think Antonio Conte has every right to be angry at this team. You know, they put themselves in a position to succeed. But how can they get that next step forward? They can't take it forward if they don't hold themselves accountable, like you've said. They hold themselves accountable and go, hey, we fucked up. Let's fix this so we can move on and finish and achieve a goal that we set for ourselves at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
In order to do that, they need guys to play better. And if they get guys to play better all around, they'll be fine. I think the thing that's killing them is if you look at what they have, right? So they played Southampton. It's 3-3. They're up 3-1 at Southampton. You give up a goal to Theo Walcott 3 minutes after scoring your third goal. Cool. That happens. Just bounce back, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that this Tottenham team is missing, and you and I both can agree here, is the fact that they don't have Hugo Lloris.
Yeah.
If Hugo Lloris was playing for them right now, this conversation would be going in a completely different direction. So for me, I just think moving forward, Tottenham, I do think they're in a little bit of trouble. They need a goaltender to step up for them. If they can get a goaltender to step up for them, they're going to be fine. But until then, I see them slipping. And a team like Newcastle or Liverpool is just going to capitalize on it. They jump right into the top four.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Agreed. And it's just, I feel bad for Antonio Conte, honestly, because I think the project for himself was starting to work when he was putting it together, but then these players' egos just got way too big, and there's nothing you can do when that happens. I mean, just look at Manchester United, how it's been the past 5 years. We have players with egos and a lot of issues going on inside that club. It's taken a manager with serious, steady hand, and a lot of turmoil to happen with that club to finally start to turn things around. And we don't even know if things have been turned around yet. We're still in a position where we don't know who our next owners are going to be, if the current owners actually are going to sell the club in full or if they're just going to sell it in portions. Yeah, it's just clearly there's a lot going on in England, more than what we see on the outside, in a lot of clubs that, unfortunately for some of the top 6 clubs, the limelight is so out there in front of them. But man, if you are a top 6 owner, you gotta do something. You have got to do something.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one of the other big things from this past weekend, we got news that Patrick Vieira has been let go as active manager of Crystal Palace. Some of the managers that have been talked about right now, Roy Hodgson being the favorite, the former Crystal Palace manager, discussed being coming back. Other names that are being involved are Jesse Marsch, Ralph Hasenhüttl, Marcelo Bielsa, Patty McCarthy, Will Still. Any of those guys potentially that you see, or do you see other names potentially creeping up and becoming the new guy for Crystal Palace?
There are 2 names. There are 2 names for me. Marcelo Bielsa, definitely one of the guys to consider. Definitely a guy to consider. And the second one, Marcelo Gallardo. People passed on him. People did not give him an opportunity. If there's a club to give him a starting opportunity, it's Crystal Palace. Those are the 2 guys that I want to see. I don't want to see Roy Hodgson come back. Roy Hodgson is the reason why Crystal Palace is where it is right now. Jesse Marsch would not be a good fit at Crystal Palace. Not a good idea. If you're thinking Domenico Tedesco, you're fucking high. And if you're thinking Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, stop smoking the same trees that you're smoking. Now, if you're thinking Ralph Hasenhüttl, okay, that's a potential, but I don't really think this is the right project for him. I think the actual best project for Hasenhüttl would be probably something like Leicester City if Brendan Rodgers is to walk away.
Think it's a Frank Lampard team?
No, oh God. It might as well just give the opportunity to John Terry or maybe even Gary Neville to come back into coaching, even though he fucked up in Valencia. No, absolutely not.
I did see one more name that I thought would be an interesting one. Former Borussia Dortmund manager Lucien Favre. I was curious by it.
I'm curious by it, but it's a yes or no question because Lucien Favre loves to spend. and Crystal Palace does not have that money.
Correct.
That it's the unfortunate truth behind it. Now, if this was West Ham United being linked with Lucien Favre, I'd say, dude, go for it. You got the capital for it. Go for it. If this was maybe even Everton or Tottenham, I'd say it's a good opportunity to go there. But unfortunately, Crystal Palace still needs to sell some major pieces in order for them to make the revenue they need to be at.
Yeah, a few names. Like you said, I agree with everything you just said. I think an interesting one maybe.
I'm shocked that you agreed because I thought for sure you were gonna be like, "Oh, this is the project for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer." I was gonna be like,
No, mm-mm. I'm sitting here and I was listening to what you were saying, and
and
I was
don't
like,
even
yeah,
think
no,
Ralph
I like
Rangnick.
him.
Don't even think Rangnick either, please.
No, everything. Honestly, Diego, this is the first time that you and I have agreed on a manager for a team. So besides Erik ten Hag, so I have nothing else to say because you basically covered everything that I thought of.
That's a
Because
shocker.
I don't think Roy Hodgson should even be thought about as Crystal Palace's manager.
Maybe for Derby County.
Yeah, no, yeah, but not for something in the Premier League right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that said, unfortunately, we are on an international break, so not much to touch upon there. But with that said, continue to follow us on Twitter at Podcast Card, Yellow Card Podcast on TikTok, which is Yellow Card Pod, on Spotify, YouTube, wherever else you listen to all of our episodes and our rambling. Please continue to do so. But until then, stay tuned with us. Season 2, episode 20 coming up next week. Till then, signing off. Diego Galvez, Chris Jones. See you all next week.